You know those times when you and your party have just spent 60 minutes verbally sparring with an important NPC, and then your DM hits you with the roll persuasion? Maybe if you're lucky, they're impressed enough to give you advantage. An hour of roleplay decided by 2 seconds of random number generator. No matter if I succeed or fail, the roleplay didn't really matter, only the dice roll did. And that's assuming I'm even the one rolling. If you don't have the highest charisma score in the party, you might as well take a nap during a social encounter. In a combat encounter, everyone is involved, and when you win, it feels like you earned it. But in my experience, social encounters, even the really important ones, just don't feel like that in D&D. That's why I was so amped when I tried out Draw Steal, Matt Colville's new game, and found that it had great mechanics for social encounters. And better yet, I think they'd be really easy to steal for D&D. So let's put on our rogue hats and attempt a robbery. Okay, you got me. I don't have a rogue hat. I hope this hamburglar mask will suffice. Let's do some crimes. First, let's acknowledge the problem we're trying to solve here. In D&D, social encounters are often reduced to a single roll, which not only makes it feel anticlimactic and makes the result feel unearned, it's also boring. If a boss battle takes up a full session, it sucks that a narratively important social encounter can't. It inherently gives the combat scenes more value and weight. Plus, since it's usually only one character making the roll, a lot of D&D groups end up with a face character who does all the charisma checks for the group, which means when it comes time to talk to an NPC, it basically becomes a one-player game. Okay, hang on, I'm not wearing this mask for the whole video. I am never taking fashion advice from the Dread Pirate Roberts again. This creates a weird tension where either the player's choices and roleplay don't matter at all, because no matter what they say, it comes down to a persuasion check in the end, or they matter too much. If you skip the roll entirely, then the outcome is based on how persuasive the players are, not their characters, which can feel just as unsatisfying. Not to mention, that can be really frustrating for people who are playing high charisma characters, but aren't themselves skilled at persuasive speaking. Leaning too hard on the quality of the roleplay as the deciding factor can also become a problem if players don't trust the DM to be unbiased. And let's be real, there are plenty of common reasons for a DM to be biased. Maybe they have a really cool stat block for this villain, and they know that if you negotiate a truce, they won't get to use it. I often see players and DMs who are frustrated with players talking their way out of combat, and I can't help but wonder if the main reason this is so frustrating is that combat has a robust system in D&D, and social encounters don't. So when you talk your way out of combat, you're kind of talking your way out of playing the game. Or on the flip side, maybe the DM is biased the other way. They might be a big softie like me and have a bad habit of folding too quickly and giving players wins that don't feel earned. Ironically, when I'm a player and I can tell that the DM is throwing us a bone, I get frustrated. Despite what people love to say about millennials, especially the blue hair and pronouns variety, I don't enjoy a game where you just win all the time. That sounds boring as hell. In one game I played, we had been warned over and over about this particular character being scary and violent and resistant to our cause. The flavor of this character was intimidating as heck. When we finally got a chance to speak to him directly, we thought it was going to take some real expert persuasion to get through to him even a little. Personally, I thought there was a very good chance that the best we'd get out of him was a promise not to interfere. So when the NPC turned out to be friendly and reasonable and we came away allies, I honestly felt kind of cheated. We had been sold this narrative of a difficult social encounter where the cards were going to be stacked against us and we were taking a huge risk. But when we actually played through it, it was a walk in the park. It felt like we couldn't trust any of the story setup that led us to that point, and we certainly didn't feel accomplished for getting what we wanted out of an encounter that was about as threatening as a conversation with a Trader Joe's cashier. Maybe there was a really good reason that we successfully persuaded that character, but since I knew there were no actual game mechanics underpinning that exchange, it was hard to not feel like the DM just took it easy on us. Short of us calling the NPC stupid and insulting his mother, I couldn't imagine a world where we didn't succeed. But that wasn't how I felt when I was playing Draw Steal, because it has a system that goes well beyond a simple persuasion check. In Draw Steal, the rules for social encounters are called negotiation. Instead of being a single check, it's a whole encounter structure, much like the structures for combat or exploration. You're making moves, things are changing over time, and you're working towards an outcome instead of jumping straight to one. Of course, this doesn't replace roleplay. Well, it can if you don't want to roleplay, but I'd be shocked if anyone who doesn't want to roleplay is watching my channel at this point. You're welcome here. This is just not a skip the cutscene kind of household. The negotiation rules are meant to work as a sort of scaffolding that supports roleplay, so the creative and the mechanical can work together and make the scene really matter. And to be clear, this isn't for every conversation. It's not like your players want to haggle with the shopkeep and you have to fill out a separate set of documentation to rule it. Just like you don't use lair actions and legendary resistances for every encounter with 1d6 wolves, you wouldn't whip out this system for every social encounter. This is for the big, important, story-shaping negotiations, the ones that are supposed to feel like key narrative moments. In a negotiation scene, each NPC has two stats that the game master tracks: interest and patience. Interest is basically how convinced the NPC is. That goes from 0 to 5. If you get it all the way to 5, that's your best case scenario. They agree to what you want, and they even throw in something extra. If it drops to 0, they won't make a deal and they are done talking about it. You stole fizzy lifting drinks, you lose, you get nothing, good day, sir. Patience is how long they're willing to keep talking to you. Almost every time you make an argument, you're burning through that patience, even if the NPC likes what you're saying. So you don't have unlimited time to just keep trying things. There is a ticking clock on this encounter. The game master gets to decide on the starting values for patience and interest. So if you pre-arranged a meeting with a powerful noble who wants something your party has, they might start with high interest. And if you manage to say just the right thing to a dragon and it pauses mere moments before barbecuing your whole party, you're probably starting with a pretty low patience score. I get it, I don't have a lot of restraint when I'm hangry either. An NPC also gets motivations and pitfalls, but before we get to that, my patience has run out and my interest in paying my bills is very high. So let's take a moment for today's sponsor. I wish I knew how to make my games feel more immersive. We're going to the Hells today, and I just really want my players to feel it. Ooh, you should use some of Czepeku's thousands of high-res battle maps. Every map has variations for lighting, weather, and tone, so you can match the exact vibe of your scene. Turn your thermostat to 100. They'll be immersed in sweat. Plus, they have these beautiful animated scenes, so you can set the mood even when you're not in combat. They pair directly with the map, so you can transition seamlessly if things get heated. Ooh, lock all your doors so none of your players can leave until the session ends. And maybe not even then. Czepeku also has hundreds of hand-drawn tokens, plus a token builder, so you can customize your monsters or randomize groups quickly. I've got it. Summon actual fiends. I can walk you through the ritual. It's super easy. Come on, don't do that. Just get Czepeku's complete fantasy bundle. It'll give you access to maps, scenes, and tokens. That's 3 subscriptions for the price of 2. Set the house on fire. Realism. Well, what's it gonna be? Are you gonna visit czepeku.com/fantasy, or are you gonna commit actual murder? Hang on, I'm thinking. Take your time. What on earth is wrong with you? Okay, back to motivations and pitfalls. Motivations are the things that the NPC cares about. There's a list of 12 possible motivations to pick from, and every NPC needs at least 2. For example, if players were negotiating with my crime boss Augury, her motivations would be power and greed. I know, a real champion of women's wrongs. She's trying to build as much wealth as she can, and in order to do that, she needs to maintain absolute control over her network of thieves and smugglers, which are notoriously difficult to control due to the whole being criminals thing. But if they were negotiating with my loyal paladin Brindis, her motivations would be justice and protection. She wants to do the right thing and uphold the good in the world, and she will do absolutely anything to keep Princess Kaliran safe. If this was just because Brindis is the captain of her guard, maybe I would choose the motivation higher authority instead, but it's actually because Brindis is in love with her, so it's much gayer than that. If players make an argument that lines up with one of those motivations, it's easier to convince the NPC to do what they want. Each motivation can only be appealed to once, so they can't just keep hammering the same point. And on the flip side of that coin, we have pitfalls, motivations from that same list that just really rub this NPC the wrong way. If players accidentally appeal to a pitfall, the NPC can get annoyed or offended and become less likely to work with them. For Brindis, appealing to greed or power would make her immediately shut down. Meanwhile, Augury's pitfalls might be benevolence, because how dare you suggest she should do something charitable, and maybe revelry. Girls may just want to have fun, but girl bosses just want to have endless riches and absolute power. That's just a little harder to fit into a catchy song. Now, just because the GM knows these motivations and pitfalls does not mean the players do. Learning what kinds of arguments will be persuasive for this NPC is part of the gameplay for negotiation. Maybe you do research beforehand, maybe you're asking the NPC questions to learn more about what they want to get out of this exchange, or maybe you're rolling checks during the negotiation to try and read into their words and their body language. If you go into a negotiation blind, you'll be at a disadvantage, and it'll be harder to get what you want. Motivations and pitfalls should be pretty easy to choose for any existing NPC, as long as you know a little about their personality. If you're building an NPC specifically for this negotiation, picking out their motivations and pitfalls could be a really useful starting point for creating a complex character that feels like a 3-dimensional person. If I'm creating a Fae Queen whose motivations are revelry and peace, and whose pitfalls are legacy and vengeance, I already feel like I have a very clear idea in my head of what that person is like. Sexy, for one thing. The way all this works in play is that every time players make an argument, the GM determines if it appeals to any motivations or pitfalls, and then you make a roll to see if it succeeds. Based on the results, the NPC's interest and patience scores may go up or down, and the conversation continues. So you're role-playing, and then you're rolling, and then you're role-playing, and then you're rolling. For context here, Draw Steal has 5 stats as compared to D&D's 6, and 3 of those stats can be used in a negotiation: reason, intuition, and presence. Those loosely map to D&D's intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, so several different skills can be applicable here. Patience and interest numbers don't have to be visible to the players, by the way. You can use roleplay to show that the NPC is getting impatient or starting to seem disinterested. I especially like this system as something that is relatively invisible from the player side, apart from their roles, but provides useful structure on the game master side. Depending on where the NPC's interest level is once their patience runs out, they'll offer different deals. Really high interest means they'll not only agree to your terms, but they'll offer you something else to sweeten the pot. Low interest might mean that they refuse your offer but give you something smaller, or if it's really low, they might even refuse it and become hostile towards you. That's why I always carry a sword, for when they won't haggle with me at the farmer's market. If this sounds like a lot to keep track of, don't worry, they have graciously provided us with a worksheet. It's literally just a page where you write down who you're talking to, what they care about, where their interest and patience are at, and what's on the table. It's not strictly necessary, but as a person whose brain resembles a pasta strainer with golf ball-sized holes in it, I find it very helpful to keep track of everything. So that's the negotiation system. A simple but robust set of rules that lend some structure to your roleplay and make social encounters feel like they actually carry some weight the way combat does. It's exactly what I want for D&D. Now, at this point, I know some of you are saying, Ginny, D&D does have social encounter mechanics. You talked about them yourself in your video about how to make your players stop talking and fight. Aww. You are listening. But you're absolutely right, those rules do exist, and maybe some of you are even using them, but I have personally never played at a table that does. And even though I remember thinking they seemed useful when I read about them, I still haven't actually incorporated them into a game. Why not? That's a great question, and one that I'm not entirely sure how to answer. Due to my aforementioned pasta strainer brain, I need a refresher on D&D social encounter rules first, and then maybe I'll be able to figure out why Draw Steal's negotiation rules stuck with me and D&D's didn't. Alright, let's take a look at what D&D is actually doing here. There's a section on page 244 of the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide called Resolving Interactions. We're throwing it back to 2014 here because this section has been almost completely eliminated from the 2024 DMG. Filling a similar role to Draw Steal's interest and patience stats, every creature starts with an attitude: friendly, indifferent, or hostile. A friendly creature wants to help you, an indifferent creature could go either way, and a hostile creature is actively opposed to you. That doesn't necessarily mean they're violent. Just because I feel hostile towards people who don't wait until the row in front of them is empty before they deplane doesn't mean I'm gonna act on it. Mainly because they won't let me bring my sword through security. But still, that starting attitude not only guides the DM's roleplay for that creature, it also sets up the limitations for what the party can realistically get out of them. Typically, even if you're very persuasive, you can only move a creature one step on that scale. So a hostile creature might be convinced to become indifferent, but probably not to become friendly. How you change that attitude is by making charisma checks. Roll well, and they'll be more likely to give you what you want. Roll poorly, and the interaction might go sour. This section encourages DMs to think about the creature's ideals, bonds, and flaws. Remember those? Remember how we used to have those? If players appeal to those traits, then the creature will be more likely to be responsive. But if you guess wrong about what'll resonate with them, you might piss them off. Players can also roll insight checks to try and learn those traits. This is honestly a lot like Draw Steal's motivations and pitfalls. It's just a little more freeform. Instead of picking out one possible motivation from a list of 12, there are infinite possibilities for what might inspire or upset a creature in D&D. Oh man, and I forgot about this part. Just like in Draw Steal, there are levels of success and failure. Depending on both the strength of your roll and the attitude of the creature, you can determine whether or not they'll do what the party asks and whether or not they'll take on any risks or sacrifices to do it. So if you roll above a 20 and the creature is friendly, they're willing to take a big risk to help you. But if the creature is hostile, even if you roll over 20, they'll only help you out if it costs them nothing. Players can, in theory, make multiple checks and allow anybody in the party to contribute. But since the checks are all charisma or insight, there's still that classic D&D problem of just making the person with the highest modifier roll all the checks, leaving us with a 1 or 2 player encounter where the marshals are just standing around. You know what's so weird about rereading this is that it really is doing almost all the same things that Draw Steal's negotiation rules are doing. It's just doing them, I guess, more loosely. You have starting attitudes, but they have less nuance. Those attitudes change over the course of the interaction, but they're super limited in how much they can change. We're told that NPCs might run out of patience if players push too hard, but there's no actual mechanic for that. It's just left to the DM's discretion. The target creature has some sort of recorded values that players are meant to appeal to, and you can roll checks to try and uncover those values. And depending on how well you do, there are multiple possible outcomes instead of a black and white pass-fail kind of thing. So then the question is, if these two sets of rules are so similar, why does Draw Steals feel so much more useful than D&D's? In my opinion, it's that D&D's rules are incomplete, and Draw Steal completes them. I mentioned before that there are a lot of things that can bias a DM towards or against letting players persuade an NPC. And when you look at these rules, a lot of the key decision points are left up to DM discretion, which is very different from how something like combat works. The rules of combat are measurable. The monster has a set number of hit points, the players deal a set amount of damage. And even though D&D always leaves room for the DM to tweak things behind the scenes, you're still starting from a system that's trying to be objective and consistent. But with social encounters, that structure is much looser. A lot of the outcome depends on how the DM interprets the character's values, the player's arguments, and nebulous concepts like the NPC's patience. It's kind of like if the combat rules said, when you feel like the monster's been beaten up enough, you can decide that it dies. Draw Steal's negotiation system feels like an expanded version of D&D's. Like they took this system and just added 10% more structure on top of it to erase that reliance on DM discretion and give game masters an actual mechanic to use. Of course, D&D already has a metric flump ton of mechanics, so you might be wondering, do we really need to add any more? As a game master, one of the things I love about D&D is that it has a lot of structure for me to fall back on if I'm not feeling like a brilliant, unstoppable storyteller that day. Because let's be honest, I don't come to my sessions every week ready to make 4 straight hours of thoughtful, inventive storytelling choices. Sometimes I'm tired or dealing with personal stuff, and on those days, I can be a better DM for my players when I have structure to support me. There are days when I could easily run an hour-long negotiation scene with an NPC and feel confident that I called for the right roles at the right times, incorporated my player character's skills and abilities fairly, and made a balanced judgment on their success. But there are also plenty of days when that is out of reach, and on those days, it would be really nice to have a worksheet. This is the section where I was going to give you some ideas on how to modify Draw Steal's negotiation system for D&D. But the truth is, it really doesn't need to be modified much. Motivations and pitfalls, patience and interest, those are all standalone mechanics that can be used exactly the same way in D&D without butting up against any existing rules. The only thing that really needs to be changed are the DCs, since Draw Steal is a 2d10 system, which has a different statistical spread of results than a d20, and it also has way smaller modifiers. For D&D, I would still use 3 levels of success like Draw Steal does, bad result, mixed result, strong result, but I would raise all the target numbers by your party's proficiency bonus, so it scales as they level. So if a strong result would normally be a 17 or higher, and your party's proficiency bonus is +3, they're now aiming for a 20. It's not perfect, but I think it's at least functional. And if it's not, I'm sure someone with a statistics degree and a spreadsheet is already typing. The other way I'd tweak the skill checks is to do what Draw Steal does and allow those checks to be intelligence, wisdom, or charisma instead of just charisma. This opens up the scene to allow the whole party to participate instead of just the ones with high charisma bonuses. And that's it. The entire negotiation system is basically already tied up with a bow and ready to be stolen. You know, whenever I talk about stealing from one game to benefit D&D, I get people saying, why steal it for D&D? Why not just play Draw Steal? And I want to be super clear here, you should absolutely play Draw Steal. It's a great game, and much of what makes Draw Steal so fun can't be stolen and stitched onto D&D. For example, combat in Draw Steal is so dynamic because every aspect of the game is built to enable and reward movement. You couldn't bring that into D&D without basically rewriting the whole system. But if something from Draw Steal can be used to make D&D better, I'm also gonna do that. I love D&D, and when I try new games, I'm not trying to find a replacement for it. I can play D&D on Tuesday night and Draw Steal on Thursday night. I don't have to pick just one. Playing other systems not only introduces you to cool new games that you might love, it can also inform and improve how you play your old favorites. At the end of the day, what I want is for social encounters to feel like real encounters, something the whole party participates in, something that unfolds over time, and something that feels earned when it's over. And if stealing a few game mechanics will get me there, well, better lock up your worksheets. I'll link to where you can find Draw Steal in the description, and if you want ideas for more non-D&D games that you can rob, check out this playlist. Or don't. I'm not a cop, obviously.